One thing I will say about the Sims 4 community is it is never boring and never without controversy. In the latest mini controversy in The Sims 4 comes from a post from the Sims team. The Sims team was basically advising people on how to improve their experience in Sims 4, specifically performance. And while this post does have a number of tips and tricks to improve performance and reduce lag, some players found it insulting and felt it was an excuse for the game's issues. So first, I'm going to start by looking at the response after the backlash, and then we will look at the original post. I will say right away, while I do lean one side more than the other, I do understand the critique from both sides. As this note reads, I'm a community manager at Electronic Arts. My work primarily involves collaborating with our dedicated teams investigating player-reported concerns, like game issues and ongoing investigations. I am also part of the team that manages the Sims Direct accounts across EA forums, X, and Discord. I'm gonna say right away that does not sound like a fun job whatsoever. But as you may have already seen on EA forums, the Sims Direct on X, or the official Discord, about a week ago, I wrote and published an article to try and pull back the curtain a bit on the technical side of Sims 4. Sharing that article here as I've gotten several messages from Simmers that it helped out. This article, however, is not "don't use these items, never cheat, etc., or never use mods." The article is to help you, the player, understand how certain things can interact with each other and your hardware. Please give it a read and let me know what you think. Art is interesting. Your feedback, whether good or bad, is super important. Now, I will say I don't actually have a problem with this note, and I do understand how some people could think this is defensive, but honestly, it was good they responded in some way because there were Simmers claiming this was just an excuse for The Sims 4 being broken. I also saw a number of tweets where people are saying the article was suggesting you basically play with nothing, examples such as bare bones houses, less inventory, etc. Now, on one hand, I do think this criticism is somewhat warranted, and why I think it's warranted is, of course, Sims 4 does have substantial issues. The main impetus should be on quality assurance to get it running as smoothly as possible. On the other hand, I will admit there are ways to play that can really greatly exaggerate your problems. I also will admit there are a number of Simmers that don't properly maintain their mods, and in addition, they might also not be very mindful about what their computer can truly handle. So I would say it goes both ways. Number one, yes, I understand in the context, this does seem like just an excuse. I actually do think that this could be helpful for people, and I still think there are some pretty helpful tips. That out of the way, let's go ahead and look at this article and see what kind of feedback it has to offer. Alongside our ongoing efforts to bring you closer to what we're working with our save file investigations and quality of life roadmap, I wanted to take a moment to share some behind the scenes info about how we make The Sims 4 the best experience it can be. That part, I admit, is kind of funny. Our team puts love and care into each pack and update we create, running meticulous performance tests to ensure they run smoothly. Now, I do understand this part. I do understand that the tone is a little bit off. That aside, I still think there is some good information in this article, so we're going to move on past their spiel and actually look at some of these tips. With that, the first section just discusses some different aspects that could impact your performance. Wallpapers. Multiple types of wallpaper on a lot will impact performance more, especially wallpapers with edges. Mirrors. Multiple mirrors in a single room will impact performance if the reflections are bouncing off each other. Doors that have glass or side lights can impact performance. Meanwhile, portal objects are any object that transitions a sim from one room or level to another. These include doors, arches, fence gates, platforms, ladders, stairs, and more. There's also, of course, poles and platforms. And again here, I do understand the backlash because as you look at this, you're thinking, why would I have a house without wallpaper or mirrors or doors? What I really feel they are trying to say is maybe if you're already struggling with Sims 4's performance, don't download a house that has just tons of extra things you don't really need. Of course, you need doors, but you don't need a house with a billion doors. Meanwhile, some other items they mention, fridges and computers. Fridges and computers have high simulation costs because they have so many interactions. Encounters are an additional example due to the amount of hidden interactions when using them. The more unique items used on a lot, the higher impact on performance. Clutter, lots of pictures, lots of carpet, window types, light types, plants all add up. Personally, I think that is probably the best advice out of all this because so far we've been going through items that are just pretty much basic necessities in my opinion. At the same same time, I would also argue that is the better takeaway. Better takeaway isn't being afraid of fridges and doors, rather using things in moderation. Ponds, the larger and more complex a pond is, the less performant it is. Small ponds with simple shapes are very performant. Large ponds with irregular shapes are less performant. And of course, the number of sims. Now, the number of sims I think is a very valid one. If you are using cheats to extend past the household limit, I would say that definitely does have an impact. In addition, we also know the number of sims or households per save file can actually increase your risk for save file corruption. Now, again, I'm not saying it should be this way, but this is the reality of how it is right now. It also ties into this next page. They do mention cheats. That doesn't mean you can't do cheats at all. The cheats are another performance variable to consider. Remember that cheats can impact your gameplay negatively if your specs aren't high enough. There's also, of course, large or complex lots and also visible objects. In addition, they also mention glass windows and glass roofs. Again, that doesn't mean you can't use them at all. It's just saying maybe don't do all this in one lot. I feel like if you have pretty good specs, maybe you can ignore some of this. And of course, while we're on the topic of specs, let's also talk about general game settings. For general game settings, you want to consider your graphic settings. The best practice is to be aware of your settings in relation to your system's capabilities. Do not increase graphic settings beyond your system's limitations. Pretty much common sense, but still a good idea to keep in mind. On PC and Mac, The Sims 4 has benchmarking systems where the game automatically optimizes graphic settings. This is the unfortunate part, so much does not address console issues. I know there are so many console players that are really struggling, and while yes, they of course can follow some of this advice, unfortunately there seems to be always less help for console players. I also do mention build cheats in particular, such as vertical move cheats, scale cheats, or bb.move objects. Again, something to keep in mind is just when you're downloading something from the gallery, number one, I wouldn't download any rentals right now because they could be corrupted, which is really scary and crazy. Number two, just keep in mind some builders are very elaborate, very talented, and if they really love clutter and exquisite details, keep in mind that lot might be a bit slower to play on. Again, I don't think it's the end of the world to download those. I would say experiment and see how your game individually runs. That's the thing, all this is so individual. You might be okay with some of these things while another person's computer might not be able to handle them as well. Also, this next part might be helpful. As I mentioned, the overall sims per save could be an issue for save file corruption. Now, there is a maximum sim count in your game options. This is an option in the household manager menu. By default, this is set to 80 sims for played households in a save. This is best for players with minimum specs. However, mid to high-end computers could upgrade to 150 max sims. Meanwhile, choosing the 200 or unlimited, of course, is potentially a problem. At the same time, I do understand a lot of people are generational players, and if you do have multiple generations, chances are you're going to have a higher sims count overall. A few things overlap what we already covered include super stuffed lots, being too many farm animals, and of course any mods that allow an increase on sim cap limits. And finally, it's always worth checking to see what your computer is doing. If you are running other apps and programs at the same time as Sims 4, that could cause some issues. As always, the best advice is to create based upon your computer hardware, listen to your game, follow moderation is key approach. Again, I understand the backlash to this, even though I sometimes think the backlash can get a little bit over the top and too personal. I feel like both things can be true. On one hand, it was good to put out this guide, even if it does get backlash. On the other hand, I feel it could have been framed better, and I feel tonally it could have been explained a bit more. The follow-up note I think is decent, but I don't know how many people will actually see it. As always, thanks so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.